Hi, I'm George Swanberg, Director of Lifeline Counseling Center, and today we're going to talk about why it's so hard for some people to stop drinking alcohol. The first thing I want to say is this is not a complete picture. When we talk about stopping drinking or using drugs, we're talking about the first thing that happens, and that's when people stop. They stop their craving and they're in the early and detoxification period. Then there comes the period when they have to learn how to live life in a very different way, with different friends, different values, different ideas of what's a good time, different value system, different spirituality. And so today we're talking about a piece of this which has to do with your brain chemistry and what sets you up to kind of want to steer back into drinking, even if you know it's bad for you. First, we're going to talk some about brain chemistry, and lots of people don't like to deal with chemistry. It's complicated. It's more complicated than really anybody can ever put into language. Nobody will ever really be able to describe it with words in the way that it really is, so we give an attempt to do that today. The chemistry is important because brain chemicals and neurotransmitters, they are transmitters, and it almost sounds like an electrical circuit board kind of terminology, doesn't it? Well, there's a reason for that, because it is kind of our circuit board and what happens in our brain. In the brain, we have a system of electrical chemical connections, and there are about 100 billion neurons in the brain and nervous system, and there are about 98 known chemicals that flow through that system. I know something about maybe a dozen of them that have to do with moods and feelings, and they are also the ones that are targeted by psychiatric medications and how we feel. So when we listen to someone, we can kind of get an understanding of what neurochemicals are lacking or what need repair by hearing what they're saying about their life. So that's why we do this. Each neuron in the brain and nervous system has what's called a synapse, a presynaptic neuron and a postsynaptic neuron. And the flow goes this way in this image. And this little neuron is creating chemicals, and it's creating some of that 98 known that are out there that we know about, that I know about. And they flow into what's called the synapse, the gap here, and then they get received by this one, and when it works efficiently, the person does not feel depressed, they do not feel pain. It might send a message that I'm hungry right now. It might send a message that I'm feeling amorous or that I need to go to sleep. So all of those things are involved with the circuitry here. When we drink alcohol, for most people, it turns into kind of a sedative. It just makes us a little drowsy up to a certain point. We learn that if we have a lot of alcohol, some people are set up to do this genetically, and we can describe that in a different video. And some people just accomplish it by drinking a lot of alcohol. But that alcohol metabolizes into something called acetaldehyde, which is a relative of formaldehyde, and it's a poison. But when we drink enough of it, it mixes with a little bit of our dopamine, which is think of amino acid that acts like dope. That's what dopamine is in the brain. And it causes a euphoria, a good feeling. But when it mixes with a little bit of that acetaldehyde, it turns into a product called THIQ, tetrahydroisoquinoline. And that THIQ looks to the brain like an opiate. Now, it's not really an opiate. It's not structured that way, but it fools the brain into thinking that it is an opiate. So it kills pain, it causes a euphoria. This is where the euphoria starts, and this is where people start to feel really good after they've had a number of drinks. And you have a whole room full of those people, and the people who can't dance are dancing, and the people who can't tell jokes are telling jokes, and everybody's doing the same thing, and it's a good time. If you do that once in a while, for most people it's not a problem. But there are people who go back and go back and go back because that particular chemical is fixing something in the brain. It's causing the person who cannot feel good otherwise to start to feel good. And that's where it runs into a problem. Now you'd say, well, if it's just causing euphoria, that's just a really effusive, ebullient kind of a high feeling, people should be able to calm down from that. But keep in mind, the brain does not have any sensory neurons. All of those, the only way that the brain has of experiencing its distress is through its cravings and through how you feel. So, excuse me, when we feel hungry, we think we got a great idea to go down to the steakhouse and have a steak. Well, the brain was also saying, hey, you need a certain kind of vitamin B and you need a certain amount of iron in your system, and you don't have that right now, so why don't we steer you over towards having the steak? And if it's omega-3 you need, it might be having the fish. So there's a feedback system going on there all the time. Now, getting back to drinking a lot and it turning into this THIQ. That's really important for a couple of reasons. One, it causes the euphoria, but the second thing is it sits in there as a messenger saying, have another drink, have another drink, have another drink. Some scientific studies have been done with animals where mice, for instance, will normally never drink alcohol. And I always ask people, do you know why? Well, we suspect it's because they're all Swedish Lutherans who never would drink alcohol. That's not true. Anyway, but I came from that, so I can tell that one. But in those animal studies, they found that when they injected a little bit of that TIQ into the body of the mice, mice who normally will never drink alcohol will go over and start drinking alcohol for the first time and prefer it to water. And they do that without pledging a fraternity or anything like that. It's not peer pressure, probably. So we know that there's a physiological connection between THIQ and the drive to drink alcohol. That's a part of it. Now, there have been some people who have said, well, that's not true, they've debunked this thing, but we know that those studies are true, and that in about 1997, I think it was, the Federal Drug Administration approved an opiate blocker, which is the same thing as you're hearing about in the news right now, Narcan, in the form of naltrexone, and they've approved that for stopping or cutting the cravings for alcohol. Well, if alcohol does not turn into an opiate, why are they using an opiate blocker to help people cut cravings? And in fact, it does work. It's under the trade name Revia. So we have many people who come in there, they've been alcoholics for many years, and their doctor has prescribed Revia for them, and in fact it does help to cut cravings. Now there's another product out there that's a more natural kind of a thing that does a very different kind of a thing. It actually restores the brain back to very good health, and that's called Synaptogenics, and I don't get anything for saying that, but it's a good product, I think. It's a much more gentle kind of a product, and it can restore the brain actually through a food process rather than a drug process to better health, and we like that. So to wrap this up, I just wanted to let people know that if you're trying very hard to be more strong, you're doing more push-ups, you're doing more running, you're getting in shape to try to outrun the craving for alcohol, it might be that if that's not working, that it doesn't work any better than it would be to do those kinds of things after you had taken a lot of laxatives, for instance. You set in motion a certain process in your system that only has one outcome. And it has nothing to do with how good you are, how hard you're trying. To a certain extent, to some extent it does matter to try hard. But so it's important to be playing on the right ball field. When a person with the THIQ and the endorphin alcohol craving starts to drink, that craving gets stronger with each drink. That's why we've known for 100 years, I mean, up until 25 years ago, they didn't really know why this happened, but we've known for 100 years or more that when a person who has a problem with alcohol starts drinking, it gets worse. That's why they say in AA, one's too many and a keg is not enough. Why would that be? It doesn't quench a thirst. If you saw somebody walking into a party and they had a 12-pack of Pepsis and they said, no, these are what I'm going to drink tonight, you'd know that they had a kind of a problem. Yet we see people doing that kind of thing with alcohol all the time, and it's actually kind of normal in some settings. So it's because once that person gets going, they have lit the fuse that always leads to the rocket, and unfortunately that rocket is sitting inside of their life and they don't have the ability to stop. So there are some answers to this, but now you know why it's very hard for some people to stop drinking alcohol. Thank you for watching.